Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 48 in our drawing series, Drawing Tutorials for Beginners. In last week's lesson, or in the last session that we did, we started adding some of the darker values with our 2H pencil. Now, I've gone a little bit further on and I've started to add a little bit more detail, particularly in the torch area. And I've started adding some of the value into the face area and the clothing, this sort of robe that she's wearing. So what we're going to focus on today is we're going to be still using our 2H pencil, but I'm going to be really focusing on using this HB pencil as well. So I'm going to go into the areas that we've already worked and I'm just going to start bringing the value up with this HB pencil. I may use a little bit of 2B today, but I'm not entirely sure. What we want to get to the stage is where we can then start to bring the 2H pencil into some of these lighter areas here. So without further ado, let's have a go at bringing some of this HB pencil, and I'm going to start in the same area that we started with the 2H pencil, which is in this middle spike, middle spear of this crown. Now, going through some of the details in this, I always tend to do this. I look at reference images and think, oh, actually, this is going to be, a slightly easier challenge and maybe not take as long as some of the reference images that we've used in the past. But then as I start getting down to the nitty gritty and really looking at some of the values and some of the details that are in there, I actually then think maybe I've bitten off a little bit more than I can chew. So I actually spent about another hour and a half to 2 hours on this drawing in between the last session and this one, just trying to get some of those values in there. So what I would suggest to you to do is, if you've not kind of caught up with where we are at the moment, and I know some of you over on the group have gone a little bit further, what I would advise you to do is, by all means watch this video and see where we get to towards the end of it, but try and catch up. So maybe pause the video and just don't rush with the 2B or the HB pencil. We're going to just try and build these values up over a period of time. We're going to get away from rushing. We want a very smooth value to our Statue of Liberty. It's what's going to give it that look of something that's been made. You're not getting a huge skin texture on this because obviously it isn't skin, so we do want some very smooth values, some very smooth transitions from darks to lights. And like I said in the first video, because this is such an iconic structure, pretty much everybody knows what it looks like, but you need to make sure that we get things right. I can't remember exactly who it was, but somebody posted over on the art group a few days ago, over a week ago now, I guess it was. Time's just going so quickly. They posted they'd gone quite a long way further than what I'd done in the first couple of lessons, but they did post on what they'd done, and I think the mouth was slightly out, and there was a few people on there that were commenting about the mouth and the left eye. And it's so important when we do something as well known as this Statue of Liberty that we get things absolutely right. We get things in the correct place, and we spend a little bit more time in the planning phase than we might do if it was just something like the barn that we did in the last project. There was a lot of room for artistic license in that one because it was an unknown picture. It was probably only ever saw by a handful of people in comparison to what the Statue of Liberty is, of course. So I'm quite happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over that with the 2H pencil. And it's this process of layering. Just because I've gone to an HB, that doesn't mean that I don't need to use the 2H again. And it's this process of layering the graphite, almost like layering pancakes that gives us a very rich tone, but it also conditions the paper so that we get this lovely, by the time we're getting to the 2B and the darker pencils, the paper takes the graphite beautifully. So don't be afraid to go up and down the pencil grades from the 2H to the HB, back down to the 2H. It really is part of the process. And that's what gives us those lovely, lovely transitions from a dark to a light in this seamless fashion. Don't forget to check our Facebook group out, guys. If this is the first time that you've visited my channel, thank you so much for clicking on that thumbnail. But we've got a really fabulous Facebook group with over 3,000 members now, which is unbelievable. And you can find all of the reference images from all of the projects, and you can draw along at your own pace and go through all of the 48 lessons that we've got up on there. My intentions were to share some of the techniques that I've learnt over the last few years and paid for. So I've done paid courses, and a lot of cases were just pretty much what we're doing now. It was drawing along in real time or on a recorded video with an artist that was really just articulating what was going through their mind, and it was something that I wanted to try and do. Obviously, I've picked up various different techniques from different artists, some that I like, some that I didn't like. I've gone through all of the pitfalls that I'm sure some of you are finding now, going through what pencils to buy, what was the best paper. So I just really wanted to put together something that was coherent and in stages. That obviously it's not the only way to produce art. Art is a very fluid medium. We use very fluid medium. We can do things in a multitude of ways. So this isn't the only way and the right way, but it's certainly the techniques that I'm trying to show you and get you to understand are something that's enabled me to sell my art, actually. So, making money from art maybe isn't what you're intending to do, but it's always very nice when somebody commissions you to do something. And although we never charge enough to recuperate the hours that we've put into it, not just the hours that we've put into the one piece itself, but the hours of preparation and practice and learning new methods, despair when you ruin a piece. I can remember drawing a piece a couple of years ago and I'd spent hours and hours on it, and for some reason my cat decided that was going to be the best place for it to sleep one evening, and really my own fault. I'd left the piece out on the table, and it made a mess of it. I think it must have been in a fight, because there was certainly some blood that was on the paper, and it was ruined, and I had to start again. So if the only lesson that you learn from this video today is to make sure that you don't leave your work out overnight. If you've got animals or small children, or anything that can go wrong tends to. So make sure that you've washed your hands before you do your work. Make sure that your drawing table's clear. There's not a flower pot or something nearby that can miraculously be knocked over. Okay, I'm going to bring some value into some of these hold areas now. These I think, I don't know if I've heard it right, but I think you can go into the centre of the Statue of Liberty, and maybe these are areas you can look out from. I don't know, maybe I'm totally making this up. I'm sure that there are people out there that have been to New York. I plan on going to New York next year, so 2020. So I'm sure this will be one of my priorities, but I'm sure I've heard somewhere or I've seen on something that you can walk up some steps in the centre of this, and maybe these are areas that you can view from. You can view the city. Now, one thing that I do make sure that I do as often as I can is I'm turning my pencil. We're using a tapered stroke, and if you're unsure of what a tapered stroke is, I would absolutely advise you to go and have a look at lessons 1 to 6. You can find that in the playlist. So if you go to the top of the YouTube channel, there's a section that says playlists, and in there is all 48 lessons that we've so far completed. Now, I know the temptation is to go in there and just start with the portrait or jump right in halfway through the Statue of Liberty or whatever it is, but some of those early lessons I really do lay down the foundations of what a tapered stroke is, how we achieve the look that we're after without blending. So I'm not using blending stumps, I'm using my pencils to blend, and I'm filling the tooth of the paper with each pencil, from the very hard pencils which get down into the lower areas of the tooth, right the way through to the softer pencils, your B pencils, your 4B, 5B, 6B, 7B, whatever you have, which leave bigger particles of graphite and clay. That's what we have in our pencils. It's a mixture of graphite and clay. And that's why if we go straight in with a dark pencil, quite often we have a very toothy paper, and what we end up with is a grainy, mottled look. So you can see the white paper from the lower areas of the tooth of the paper almost shining through, because the tooth of the paper hasn't been saturated, which is ultimately what a blending stump does. It pushes the graphite down into the tooth of the paper, and it gives you a very smooth look. Now, I can hear some of you saying, what's the problem with that? You know, surely that's something that we want. The issue that I have with that is once you've ground down the graphite into the tooth of the paper, it is almost impossible. Well, it is impossible actually. You can't remove the graphite completely. You've damaged the tooth of the paper, and what you're left with is a shiny, flat texture where you can't completely remove the graphite. Now, when we're looking for realism, which is what I'm trying to teach you, and it's the area that I was most interested in when I first decided that I wanted to give drawing a go and art a go. I wasn't interested in this abstract art and paintings and oil painting, things like that. I just was really drawn to realistic graphite work and charcoal work as well. But when we're looking for this realism, it is very important that we get these very subtle value changes. So people talk about dark values, mid values and lighter values. Well, within those three generic tones, we can have some very subtle changes. And it's within those subtle areas that we create the illusion of form and dimension. And that's what we can achieve with this technique. We're able to remove the value very, very easily. We're able to tap back some of the value gently and create these wonderful changes in value. So yes, this method may take a little bit longer, but unless you're working for somebody that's giving you a particular time constraint, I really wouldn't suggest rushing through your work. This is as much a exercise in mindfulness and almost meditation as it is in trying to just produce pieces of work quickly. Some of the best night's sleep that I've ever had have followed rather a long period of drawing, so a couple of hours here or there, where obviously I'm not making a video and I'm not trying to narrate what's going through my mind. I just give myself that opportunity to just switch off, just gradually build the values up. Working on hair sometimes is like that, where we don't have to be too detailed. So you can see I'm just bringing the value up now in those areas. I'm just going to move around the drawing a little bit just so that you get an understanding of the method that I'm going through, because obviously I'm not going to completely finish with this HB pencil in this half an hour session, which is what I like to keep these lessons up around. But it's going to give you an understanding of where we're going with this, so that I can then leave you at the end of this lesson. We're sort of around the 15-minute mark now, so sort of halfway through where I want to be, but just giving you an understanding of how my mind's working, where I'm going. So I'm looking for the darkest areas that I've already started to lay down with the 2H pencil, and I'm just working in from those zones. I'm bringing the contrast up. I'm protecting the lighter areas, so we have a few light areas around this nose area, and I'm making sure that I'm protecting those. I'm never going to be able to avoid getting the graphite completely in there, so that's not necessarily something that I want to do, but I will protect it by avoiding it as much as I can and just moving some of the graphite away with my kneaded eraser. You can find a kneaded eraser on Amazon. They're very cheap. They're almost a putty eraser. In England we use something in everyday household wear called Blue Tack. Blue Tack does work. It's not as soft and it does harden up a little bit, and it's not a specialist designed piece of equipment specifically for art, but if that's all you have available, it does work. But for me, the kneaded eraser was really a revelation when I stumbled across that, viewing various YouTube videos and art tutorials back in the early days. It was an absolute revelation to me. A kneaded eraser. I went out and got one from the local stationers and went through a few various different ones. Some were too hard and some almost left a residue on the paper. So I've settled on a, let's see if we can see that. It's a Faber-Castell kneaded eraser. It just comes in this handy plastic case. And just make sure that we freshen it up every now and then. Just pull it apart. And I always like to roll my kneaded eraser into a ball and just have one end that's got a slight tip and point to it. And I can just then go around these areas that need the highlights, just bringing out slightly. Like I say, just protecting these slightly lighter zones. And I'm constantly going to be doing that during my time working on the drawing. It's not something that, and again, it was something that I did in the early days when I used to use blending stumps, and I've tried all manner of things to blend with tissue paper. I even bought an artist's chamois leather, which again is fantastic for creating a smudged look, but it was very difficult to remove. But I digress. What I used to do was I used to leave the highlights till the very, very end. So I'd take the lighter portions of the nose out and the sparkle in the eye, and what I had to do was really, really work hard with the value to remove it. So now what I like to try and do is keep maintaining that lighter area throughout the entire drawing. I just wanted to, as always, just thank you guys for supporting the channel, supporting the Facebook group. We have got a very mature Facebook group on there. I think I'm only having to remove 1 or 2 posts a week that are non-art related, and I'm sure you know the types of posts. They're prevalent in other art groups. I think that some of these art groups that are growing to sort of 35, 45,000 members, so difficult for the admins to keep up to date with what's being posted, and you know, there's all manner of nonsense being posted on art groups, which for me, I think people are going there for art most of the time, but you know, there's dating adverts and how to earn money via scams and just silly things like that. And I'm pleased to say that we aren't having too many of those, which is great. So let's keep it that way. But yes, just thanks so much for the comments. I never thought that we would have reached 48 videos, and some of the things that we've discussed and some of the people that we've kind of got to know over on the group, it's fantastic. So as I'm laying this HB pencil down now into these darker zones, what this will then allow me to do is start bringing the 2H pencil out a little bit further than where I ordinarily was. And what I'm doing is I'm constantly bringing the drawing to life. I always feel as though it looks as though, as we start adding these darker values, it almost looks like the portrait or that whatever it is we're drawing is sort of emerging out of a fog. We get to a stage in our drawings where, although they're not finished, you could almost leave them, and there's enough information there and there's enough of the details because of the way that we're drawing this, or any one of our pictures that we've done so far, that we could leave them at B and still have a stunning piece of artwork that ticks a lot of the boxes that we're looking for. And again, there's a lot of fantastic artists out there that will do certain sections of their drawing to completion. So they may have started up in this top section of the drawing with the hand holding the torch, and from there they complete one area and work their way around. That's absolutely brilliant. You know, I love that. It doesn't work for me. I like to bring the drawing together in a whole. I like to see it emerging from that blank piece of paper. The other problem is if I work one area to completion, let's say we started up in the left hand side on the torch, if I struggle to understand how to balance my values, I may go slightly too dark in an area, which then means it throws the rest of the drawing off. So I might then need to bring the value up darker than I intended to in a lower portion of the drawing. Otherwise it looks unbalanced, or the light reflection doesn't quite work, the shadows don't quite work. So by building the values up gradually and working up through my pencils and always starting in the darkest areas, for me it just feels as though I hit that moment when I know the drawing's complete. And I've said this on previous videos that when we finish a drawing, quite often for me, I haven't sat down before that session with the intentions of this is going to be the last session of the drawing. As I'm drawing and getting to that stage, it just suddenly dawns upon me that actually, I think I've completed this now. This is where I wanted it to be. Now, obviously, we can fine tune and we can pick and prod at our art forever. I've used the quote before that art is never finished, it's just merely abandoned. But that's the beauty of working the method that we're looking at here. So I've used some HB in that part of the crown. I'm coming over again with the 2H now. And because I'm not pressing on as hard as I can with any pencil, you can see I'm holding the pencil about halfway up. I'm not bearing down right near to the point. And I'm very lightly, almost dusting the graphite onto the page. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to get value out of a lighter pencil, even in an area that I've used a darker pencil. And it's those opportunities that we have to really have a multitude of value changes in the same area, which is exactly what we want for realism. This is not all the same value. I've got some weathering in there where one of the edges is slightly darker than the area above it. And it's using these pencils in this fashion that enables me to do that. Now, you might not be able to see it brilliantly on the video, but I can still see a change of value even with this 2H pencil. Now, if I just bared down straight away with my 2H pencil and then gone down into the HB pencil and bared down as hard as I could with that, what I'm explaining to you now would be impossible. So I could even get a 4H pencil out now and I could still see a value change in certain areas, because what we're doing is so although we've only got a layer of HB underneath this layer of 2H, the HB and the 2H mixed intensifies the value. So I can see that we're sort of coming up towards that half an hour mark again, and it really doesn't look as though we've done an awful lot. But I'm going to continue now adding this HB into some of these darker areas. I'm definitely going to spend another hour at least on this. So if you guys do the same thing, keep going around your darkest sections, layering this HB lightly. If you want to then start bringing some of the 2H pencil away from where we've finished our layer of HB, then that's absolutely fine. I will also be doing that. And then in the next session, we will definitely start to be adding some 2B. So one of our softer pencils, we'll be adding the 2B, still layering the 2H and the HB as well. So I need some 2H in there now. But yeah, that'll be fantastic if we continue in that vein. And I look forward to seeing how some of you are getting on with this. It is a challenging piece, but I'm sure we'll get there. As always, thank you so much for watching and supporting. I know I say this a lot, but I really am grateful for it. And I know that a lot of you on there are grateful as well, you know, for the group and how supportive we all are. But it really does make a nice change to see some support in these art groups. And also, it's nice to have an art group that seems to have a bit of a mission and a bit of a direction to it, rather than just endless posts and self-promotion, which is what you see on a lot of these sites. And don't get me wrong, they are great opportunities out there to promote, and that's what a lot of the groups are for, and I've got no problem with that. But when that's all it is, when all you see is members taking and not giving back, it does grate a little bit. So I'm going to continue with this for a little bit longer. I hope to see some of your progress. We've made some nice progress there. I'm going to start adding some of the HB around the chin area as well, and then hopefully for the next lesson we'll really start to then add some of the darker values, which will really pull this off of the page. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye bye. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.